Joining me now is Oregon Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley. He's author of a new book, America is Better Than This, Trump's War Against Migrant Families. Senator Merkley, I feel like there's two big issues that you've been at the center of since your time in the Senate. One, obviously, is what you wrote about. The other is your friend Mitch McConnell wrote about the filibuster today. And I know you've been I would love to one day watch the two of you debate the filibuster. Whether or not we'll allow the filibuster to be used during your debate is a whole other story. But let me talk first about your book, at least the subject matter of your book, and what the administration's trying to do with this new law that would essentially get rid of the Flores settlement and allow children to be detained with their parents without a time limit. What do you do? They're going to try to make, and I know there's sort of a legal path. Is there a legislative path that you'll attempt to stop him with this?
Well, yes, I already have the bill that is Stop Cruel Treatment of Migrant Children Act. It has 40 Democratic sponsors. Unfortunately, no Republicans have stepped up to defend the maltreatment, the ill treatment of migrant children. And this proposal by the administration, this regulation, this Child Imprisonment Act would result in both individual children and their parents being locked up for long periods of time, which has a traumatic impact on their lives and is not the right way to go.
Do you believe there's any realistic way this gets through the Senate at all? Or how many Republicans at all do you have open to your legislation on this?
So we're very divided. The president has really made the treatment of immigrants a key piece of his vision for the last election and the next election. To understand this divide, you have 40 senators who have signed on to legislation, 40 Republican senators signed on legislation that would do the same thing as this rule, that is, allow the forever imprisonment of migrant children. And you have 40 Democrats who have signed on to treat immigrants with respect and decency as they await an asylum hearing. That should be the way we approach folks who are fleeing terrific circumstances around the world, circumstances that many of our ancestors experienced. How would we want our own family to be treated if they came here requesting asylum?
Well, it's interesting that you just outlined the divide in the Senate that way, because it actually gets it to a point that I'm curious where you stand on this with the presidential race. Just as a consumer of presidential ideas and plans from all the various candidates, there's always one plan that's missing from every one of these proposals, and that is the plan to implement this idea if my party is not in charge of Congress with 70 senators and 300 House members. Meaning, in a perfect world, this is what your plan would look like. How are you going to govern in this divided world that is the reality? Does Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in particular, but Joe Biden too, owe voters that explanation too? I mean, you and I both know Medicare for All isn't getting through the Senate in 2021. It might get there by 2025, 2026. Do you have to be more honest with voters on that?
Well, I think you do have to lay out a vision of what you think can get done in the legislative process. Of course, that depends a lot on who controls the Senate, and it depends a lot on whether the supermajority reigns. You mentioned the filibuster before. I thought that Mitch McConnell's presentation today was disingenuous at best, because there were two top priorities for the Republicans. One was the Supreme Court. The other was tax cuts for the wealthy. In both cases, the Republicans changed it to a simple majority.
They ditched it, right. They ditched the filibuster.
In both cases. So their top priorities for the powerful are in place by simple majority. Are Democrats going to have the same guts to do an agenda for the people by simple majority? Or are we going to allow the Senate to now be a chamber that is completely an unlevel playing field where the powerful are on top?
Let me ask you this, though. What would you do to sort of keep the Mr. Smith myth alive, right? You know, that was what the filibuster gave, which was this belief of Mr. Smith can go to Washington and one senator can do something, can either get something done or stop something in its tracks. What does that look like in a no filibuster world?
Well, I'll tell you what we have right now. It's not Mr. Smith goes to Washington under the current rules. It is only the majority leader deciding what comes to the floor, only the majority leader deciding what amendments are there. I'm talking to my Republican colleagues about a right to amend bipartisan movement, because the Senate is being destroyed by Mitch McConnell's imperial rulership over it. And so anyone who wants to make a difference, if you have a simple majority process, you have a chance of being able to go forward on a given issue, even in the minority, get Republican support, be able to move forward. But you aren't going to be able to do that if on every issue you need 60 votes, or the majority leader controls everything that comes to the floor, including what amendments can be offered. Senate's profoundly broken. We should remember the Continental Congress had a supermajority
Senator,
requirement.
I promise you the House is broken too. The entire process is broken. The leadership, you guys in committees get no power anymore. And that is, to me, the greatest shame of it all.
But the House is passing legislation. They're debating and passing. There's a whole raft of legislation that should be considered in the Senate.
Very quickly, the gun issue. What's real here? Is a background check bill going to get a vote, you think? Do we actually get a vote on one? Whether it goes up or down, I don't know. But do you think something actually comes to the floor?
I don't think so, because I don't think Mitch McConnell, who will control that, wants to have his members take a position on it. It is absolutely the way the Senate should be. In just a few years ago, you could force a vote on something like that. But now it's all in his hands. He doesn't want his folks to be in the situation of, having to defend either side. And so avoid it. And it's really regretful, because last year, 1.2 million guns were offered for sale without a background check. I think it's about 20% of the guns sold without a background check. Oregon, a very strong Second Amendment state, has a strong background check system for online sales, personal sales, gun show sales. And I do a town hall in every one of my 36 counties. No one comes and says, let's get rid of the background check system. It's a very reasonable thing to do.
If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be afraid of a background check. Democratic Senator Jeff Berkley with your new book. Congrats on the new book. Be safe on your book tour. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.